Everybody. Chapter two is going to be an extension of what we discussed in chapter one. So thinking a little bit about how communication planning has changed based on some of those factors that we discussed in chapter one. So when we think about campaign development, um, what once worked 50 years ago, what worked in a more traditional legacy media environment, what worked for TV, newspapers, print magazines, etc., is not going to be the same, um, will not work today. Because we have so much more going on in terms of media, in terms of content and access, and just the ways that campaigns can reach audiences. So, thinking about those kinds of things is going to be really helpful in, as you start working through your own campaigns and through your own work in this class, right? That we now live in kind of exist in an environment where we have this sort of fragmentation of media, right? That the media is across multiple platforms. It can be accessed in a variety of ways. Um, that what was once a traditional media format is now a very interactive, um, no longer one way form of communication, right? That you have your, New York Times accessible in several different spaces. You are able to engage with that content. You're able to share it, like it, comment on it, etc. And so that is, a key factor in the big change in, development of campaigns throughout even the last 10 years or so, 5 years. You also have the analytics side of things now, right? Google Analytics, Facebook Analytics, those things tell us something about the content that you're creating, right? How is it being engaged with? When, where, how many different kinds of engagement are, how are people engaging? So things like likes versus retweets versus shares, where and when those things are happening. So you are very, if you have access to that information, attuned to exactly how your content is being received by various audiences. Of course, this allows for kind of immediate change of your campaign plans as you go through that information, right? You don't have to wait, for the returns on your investment to find that information out in days, weeks later. You can find those things out in real time, and that can help you to shift gears more effectively in a sooner time frame than a traditional advertisement where you have to put that ad out there, see how sales change, weeks to months later, and then kind of course correct as you find out that information. So this stuff happens in real time. And we also have those concepts of media convergence and the medium being the message. So with the idea that all of this information is accessible in different spaces, that audiences want that accessibility, that audiences are looking for the various ways that they can engage with this content and access it in ways that make sense for them, along with the fact that, as we've said already, that the medium itself can be the message. So whichever platform or space or format that content is being shared on can really play a role in how the message itself is or isn't received. So when you are thinking about planning a campaign, the goal at the start of your campaign should be, what is the problem and what needs to be solved? So when you are starting to think about your own campaigns, these are some of the questions you should be asking yourself, right? What is the need here, right? What do consumers need? What do audiences need? What sorts of needs are not being met? And how can you come in and help with that, help fix that need, or solve that problem? And in the campaigns, when you meet with your organizations, you can discuss some of the things that perhaps they see as being problems or issues that need to be addressed. And that could be more engagement, that could be wider audiences, selling a new product or a new service, getting the word out about something that their organization offers. And so those are, it depends, and it varies industry to industry and business to business, but, what kinds of things can you help with to solve that problem? Looking, specifically at what stage of that problem is your audience in, right? What is the need that needs to be satisfied? And who are sort of the competitors or the groups or organizations out there that are able to help solve that problem, right? Who are the ones that, what brands are trustworthy? What brands do people go to, first and foremost? And how can you help your organization become or improve on their ability to be that go-to brand? And so, at the end of the day, one of the important things to think about is how can a brand become or to look for that right audience at the right place at the right time. That seems like a lot, but that is the goal, right? That is why we are constantly inundated with messages and content and images and advertisements in all capacities, is because this is what companies are doing with that content, right? They're trying to find that right audience at the right place at the right time. And if your brand is, ads on Instagram, YouTube videos, websites, print ads, bus, on the sides of buses, advertisements, the ability to reach that audience expands, right? It goes up because you have more visibility of your company in various different spaces. And so those are the sorts of things that we want to think about as we are starting to work through some campaign ideas. What are those problems that need to be solved? And where is your audience? How can you reach them at the right place at the right time? And so when you start to think about what your company's, and objectives that or the needs that need to be met and the things that your audiences and customers need, is to identify the difference between those business objectives and those business challenges. Once you do that, I think you'll be able to kind of see and start identifying those measurable goals, right? Measurable ways that you can be or help to develop that successful campaign. So an objective is different from a business objective is different from a business challenge, in the sense that business objectives are specific and they are goals that have a measurable impact. Okay, so these are two examples that are up here on the slide. That increases, the business objective is to increase sales of Oreos by 5% in the next year. Okay, so it's specific, it's got a measurable impact. Those are things that you can quantify and look at in the sales, right? And in those, the outcomes, depending on location and brand and, what flavor Oreo people like, that you can quantify all of that data, look at it, across the country or across a state or even across a city, and see how those objectives are being met. Same with the next one, increasing your share of the laptop category by 10% in the next 6 months. Again, these are quantifiable deliverables, right? That this is, that you can look at the numbers and see how your company, if you are in the laptop industry here, has increased the share of your company in the next 6 months, right? The hope is that you do, but there's a chance that you won't, but you'd be able to see that data in those raw numbers. Your business challenge, of course, is going to be a little bit different, but it's information that helps you kind of see how you can manage those goals, right? The information about your audiences, the information about your customers that can help you determine whether or not you're going to be able to meet these sales objectives. So in the case of the Oreo example, right, a business challenge for the Oreo brand could be that people are avoiding sugary foods, right? This isn't necessarily a quantifiable bit of information, but based on, things like sales and, just personal preferences and information that we know about how people are shopping today, that you may find that this is something that becomes useful information to help you set those business objectives. And again, right, the overall sales of laptops is in decline. Important information to help you kind of see whether or not that goal or that business objective is going to be met. So, it's good information. The business challenge information is not going to be as quantifiable and as objective as it says it in the name, the business objectives, but it's good information to help you see whether or not your business objectives are going to actually be successful. So every company, whether it's a small family-owned business, or a big company like Apple, Nike, car companies, all need to think about the challenges that their companies face. That we have issues in terms of the societal challenges, the economic challenges, the technological challenges, and the political challenges that can all, in various capacities, affect a brand or affect a business and the objectives and goals of a company's, bottom line. The font on here looks like it has not come through, but each of these images here kind of demonstrates or stands in for the societal challenges, the economic challenges, the technological ones, and the political ones. So what in terms of societal norms are changing, right? Beliefs and values, the public's beliefs and values change all the time. And this can influence how people buy certain products, whether they do buy them, whether they don't buy them, and in what capacity, right? What kinds of, things in terms of, social impact are changing the ways that we shop, or the companies that we engage with, the companies that we feel comfortable spending our money with. So that can be a challenge, right? That can be a challenge for a company that, is seeing, good numbers or bad numbers because of, how the public opinion is toward their particular brand. The state of the economy can also be a challenge. If money is tight for a lot of people, certain luxuries, certain industries like travel, for example, can be impacted, right? So if things are going well economy wise, the people are going to be more likely to spend on certain things in certain categories as opposed to others. Inflation's a big conversation topic right now. How is inflation affecting day-to-day habits, right? Shopping habits, travel habits, consumption habits of all kinds. So it's a really complicated issue that does for sure affect, how do you market your products, right? How do you convince, a public that your company is worth spending money with, or your products are worth buying. So again, right, thinking about how that works and how companies face those kinds of challenges. Technology. How has technology changed how society functions? This is definitely a big one right now. If you look at some of the conversation around tipping culture in the US, right? That a lot of the conversation around tipping culture is directly kind of correlated with the rise of the iPad registers that you see at stores these days, right? If you go into like a coffee shop or a place where you order at the counter, most of those companies that use those iPads that you can swipe and you can pay and everything, and it's a touch screen, are also including tips. So it's how has that technology, right? How have those iPad registers kind of changed the way that we are understanding tipping culture in this country? It's been an interesting conversation. It's been a big topic, I think, because places where you wouldn't necessarily tip before, the expectation is now that you tip there. So it's a whole very complicated process and conversation topic, but it's an interesting one to see how technology, how smartphones and the iPad, I guess they're iPad registers, are changing how we, engage with those spaces. And then lastly, what kinds of policy changes? So the political landscape. How does legislation affect your business? Are there any kinds of regulations being put in place that change how your company can function. And again, right, all of these are complicated in a variety of ways. How is this something that may impact your company today in ways that it didn't 5-10 years ago? So these are all things that we need to consider and think about as you are working with your organizations, and getting a good sense of how all of these can impact the day-to-day business that you're trying to kind of work with here. So there are 3 examples here from the textbook that faced various challenges that had to do with the technology, that had to do with social changes, that had to do with environmental or economic changes. And Under Armour, Lean Cuisine, and T-Mobile are the 3 examples. And in the next upcoming slides, I will kind of go into some details here. But if we talk about those business challenges, Under Armour, conducted some focus groups. They maybe conducted some surveys, talked to women to see how their brand was perceived. And Under Armour, with that data and with that information, found that women felt their brand was very masculine, and women may not have necessarily felt that the brand represented their interests and their needs accurately or effectively. And of course, if you don't feel represented by a brand, you're not necessarily going to buy products from them. So they had to change up their strategies a bit to affect change and get people to see their brand, women specifically, to see their brand as one that is one that women feel comfortable wearing. Lean Cuisine is another example, and these videos, I'm going to click through them on the slides, but you'll be able to see them on Blackboard. Also, another company with some perceptions that needed changing based on the way society was thinking about nutrition and the word diet, and how this company that has sort of created products based on the idea of losing weight and weight loss and all that stuff had to redefine who they were and what they stood for. And so the video, their campaign for #WeighThis, shows how they tried to shift public opinion about what they kind of stood for and what their products were all about, so that they were viewed less as sort of like a diet brand and more as a lifestyle choice. And then lastly, we have T-Mobile here, and their challenge was that Hispanic males had the highest penetration of all demos in the smartphone category, but T-Mobile was losing out to Boost and Cricket. So they had to try and redefine their product, redefine how they were going to get those audiences to buy, or to buy T-Mobile products. So those are the 3 campaigns that we'll look at here, and this one here. So I kind of did just sort of go into detail about these, but looking at some of these outcomes here, that women were aware of the brand and the apparel line. They didn't really see it as something relevant to their interests. So it wasn't necessarily like brand awareness, because people knew who Under Armour was. But it was just changing those perceptions, right? So that societal challenge that these companies have to face. And so Gisele Bündchen here is in the video, and she's kind of trying to showcase that this is not a masculine brand. This is for women. This is for strong women. And you can watch the ad and kind of see how the company is looking to redefine the athletic clothing industry, make the product appealing, and also use a recognizable face to get all of that, to get audience attention, right? To get engagement and to get interest from women who would see this and say, okay, I know who that is. I really like the message. This feels like something I would be buying, or I'd be interested in buying. And so the Lean Cuisine video, again, you can see on Blackboard, is a campaign that they launched to see if we could change public perception of this idea of losing weight, right? It's not necessarily about losing weight, but changing to a more focused approach on health and wellness. So they were shifting public perception. If you watch this ad, they don't even mention food, right? It's not about food. It's not about the meals that they sell at the grocery store. That it was this more holistic sort of approach to focusing less on the scale, as you can see in this image here. That's what is up on the wall there, and more on lifestyle and who people want to be recognized for and for what reasons, other than diets and losing weight and all of that. Okay, and then lastly is the T-Mobile video. This is just it's like a 8-minute, 9-minute kind of webinar where they discuss how they reached this audience of Hispanic males, trying to gain back some of those those customers, right, that they were losing out to Boost and Cricket. So trying to define that category that they are in, trying to get that demographic, and trying to bring back some of those audiences that they have lost to other cell phone providers. So when you're thinking about your target audiences, and this is going to be something you want to discuss with your organization, they'll have some information on this, but what else can you provide in terms of your own understandings of these audiences and how you can reach specific ones along the way? Is who do you want to reach, and how are you going to define them, right? So there are different ways that we can define audiences, demographically, psychographically, and behaviorally. All of these show us different things about who audiences are and what their interests are. Your demographics are going to be things like your age, gender, where people live, employment status, etc. And that's going to be your kind of numerical, quantifiable data, right? How many people who buy Lean Cuisine products are the ages 35 to 55, right? How many are women versus men, right? You can find that information, you can collect that data, and get a good kind of sense for that hardcore raw data. Your psychographics and your behavioral graphics, or your psychographics and your behavioral information will tell you about the habits, right? The lifestyles, the preferences, the values, the beliefs, the way people act, and gives you a more in-depth, more detailed depiction of who your audience is, right? When you're thinking about Under Armour, for example, when you have a percentage of their customers that are women, looking at that percentage of women, how many are runners, right? How many, if we're talking about like the exercise habits, right? The sports habits of the women that buy Under Armour products, how many of them are marathon runners? How many of them, play tennis? How many of them go hiking, right? Those kinds of things can tell you more about what those audiences would be most interested in. And it can help you to lead you to better products. It can lead you to better marketing of those products. And so knowing that information, obviously, as you can see, can be really valuable in showing you something about who's buying and maybe who's not, and who can you reach, right? Who of those audiences can you continue to reach? And so here's just some more, information about that. So, values and habits and lifestyles, etc., will tell you what I just said, right? How can you market Under Armour products to women, right? Well, what sorts of categories of athletic, of sports or exercise habits do women lead in? What are the ones they're most interested in? How can you target those audiences? How can those audiences feel seen or represented in your content? And again, right, all of this stuff can can be collected. You can kind of see where people are clicking and how people are clicking and what they're looking at on your website. And that, again, will also tell you a little bit more about what's the best approach to reach those particular audiences. So in conclusion, you really are thinking about the customer or the consumer today. That the consumers, customers, whatever you want to call them, have a lot of agency, right? That they have a lot of ability to make these informed decisions, to know a lot about different companies and what they offer. That they have that transparency, or they expect that transparency. And so we need to think about how the companies can use that most effectively, how we can target those audiences, how we can get people to say, yes, I trust your brand. Yes, I want to buy from your brand, and find ways to make sure that the that messaging is, in the right place at the right time, right? Is it, are you looking for those audiences on Instagram? Are you looking for them on TikTok? What are the demographics of those spaces? And how can you cater that content directly to the audiences that you're going to reach in those spaces versus other ones, right? A television ad for Under Armour is going to be reaching a different audience than the one on TikTok. So knowing that socio-demographic information and that psychographic information and the behavioral data, right? Where are people clicking? What are they looking at? What are they engaging with? Can also tell you some more about those audiences as well. So finding all of that out, thinking about where and how and when to reach those audiences is going to really help shape the perception and the public opinion of your brand. So I think that that's really, a good sort of summary of what we've got in chapter 2 here.